Hello, everyone. So today we are going to go ahead and go to part two of discussion on Satan. This is going to be discussion on Satan part two in the title, and we're going to continue the conversation we just had not too long ago on Satan. And now the prevailing question that we have beginning this is: would you go back to when you didn't know what you know? Is that basically the question you wanted to ask?
So knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Then therefore, would you go back? If you could go back to the point of origin, do you think if you fall into the category you believe that your soul is eternal, would you go back to the point to where you didn't know? If you had a choice to know evil, would you want to know? Would you want to continue?
Are you basing it based on the traditional idea of Adam and Eve and the fall and the tree of good and evil, or is it just something separate?
Well, I mean, I think that there's good and there's evil regardless of what religion. I think everyone can agree on that.
Okay, so basically before this material universe was
So, I mean,
created,
do you think that you had like a preference?
I definitely choose good based on the the loaded question, but would I go back and not know some of the things that I know? And I think that there are some things that I know that I wish I didn't, as far as about information on the hells or information about the hierarchy and how people fall and how easy it is to continue to fall if you just base your ideology on gaining more power, gaining more selfish energy. And I realize how much you can gain, how much selfish energy and power you can gain if you just are focused on yourself. And there's a part of me that wishes that I didn't know that. Not because I'm tempted to, but because I see why other people are tempted. And ultimately, I think that would I go back to when I didn't know what I know, as far as the hierarchy and how you become a demonic self and how you work towards being a demonic, I guess you could say, god or prince or king, based on the hierarchy. I think that I still would want to know that, so I don't think I would go back and not know some of the things that I know, because I think that what I know about so-called evil, or the darker, more chaotic slash lack of mercy side of creation and the beings that exist there and kind of evolve in a terrible way there, I think that because I know those things, it gives me perspective on who I am and why I work away from those things. So, is there any question that came to you based on what I just said?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that for me at least, it's the more you try to understand, the more narrow the road becomes, and just so your soul, you identify with your soul, which that's I think a part of realization. I don't know if you consider it enlightenment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I consider enlightenment or moksha, liberation, varying degrees, all the way up until you're completely enlightened or completely, basically one with the source, one with God. I think that the path does become more narrow, but not in the sense that it becomes one religion or one spiritual idea. It becomes more narrow in the sense that you start to realize that helping others helps you. And that may seem very simple, but the more that we are at harmony with everything around us, the more we gain along our spiritual journey to reaching that ultimate state of contentment, that is enlightenment and moksha, liberation. What would you say that your idea of contentment, or basically being with God, is? Is it happiness and contentment, or is it?
Well, no, I think knowledge. The more knowledge you have, it's definitely, yes, you can do good with your knowledge, but whatever. I mean, just the characteristic of the human soul is the more knowledge you have, it's just automatically going to be equal more power. No matter who you are, unless you disappear from society. I mean,
yeah. So the more you know about how society works and how people in society relate to the powers just behind the reality that we know that is very material, the things that we don't see. The more knowledge we have about the things that we don't see, the more power we get by proxy to the knowledge. And that's why it's said that a lot of saints fall, because, or a lot of even yogis fall, because they start to realize that they can gain all of this stuff with the power that they have, the understanding that they have of the nature of reality and the fabric of reality. They can use it to gain selfish satisfaction. And that's always a threat, no matter how narrow the path comes, until you reach, that narrow path becomes more and more narrow until you reach, complete union with God, where the path is just obliterated, and you're completely one.
Right, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that the more you focus on being one and true, that some of these, if I could go back and not unlearn things about certain knowledge that I have, right?
Yeah.
I would definitely go back because I see that certain knowledge, yes, it gives you gain power from it, but is it necessary?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the knowledge that I know as far as about the Loa and the Vodou tradition, and a lot of what I know about the demonic hierarchy, which, Vodou is mainly like, working with spirits that are intrinsic to reality, and most of them are good. There's chaotic side of Vodou. But regardless, without going too much into that, I think that even in like Hinduism, knowing certain mantras and chants that connect you with a very selfish power is negative, and that's a very small part of Hinduism as well. And it's just the negative side of it. And, there's a negative side of Christianity, the very black magic occult side of what you learn. You can use the Bible to basically work towards a greater degree of power. In an occult sense, but not all occult is evil. It's just that there are certain things you can learn in the Bible as far as what Solomon did, and Solomon's so-called achievements, and reading between the lines. If you know how to look at the Bible or any spiritual text, you can use it to the negative. But I think that ultimately, the biggest part of every religion and spiritual tradition is trying to basically show you how, regardless of the power that you can have, the best existence, and that will bring you contentment and will bring everyone else contentment, is to appreciate and work towards oneness, and to basically have that interaction with other people. So Satan, as far as something that I would say about Satan that might be controversial, is that I believe that deep down Satan knows that he plays a certain role, that he is the counterbalance, and he was willing to play that role. But deep down, at his core, I think that he's a frustrated child that wants to be recognized by his dad, and that's the same with in the Ramayana with Ravana. He basically does all that he does and all this evil stuff and at the end he said, in a lot of Ramayana interpretations, he says, I didn't know how else to get you to interact with me immediately and as soon as you did. I didn't know. He's basically addressing God, saying, I didn't know how to get you to really look at me and appreciate my existence, besides doing all this terrible stuff. And I think that ultimately, deep down, that's what Satan and Lucifer is a slightly different form of Satan, I guess you could say. Different. You can call him a whole different deity or spirit or fallen angel. But I think that regardless of what form we look at Satan through, he's always willing to perform that role, and deep down he still wants God to recognize him. And then that's why that he's done this rebellion, I guess you could say, is to get God to really look at him, because he wants God's love, but he's not willing to be anything other than an individual. And eventually, the closer to God you get, the more your lines disappear. You become less and less a single individual, and less a separate being, and you become more and more one with God. So Satan wants to be a separate being and be recognized as that separate being, and for the value of his separation. And that is the path away from God, because it requires one to just value selfish ego and one's own representation apart from everything else. So the further away from God you get, the more individualized you become, and the more able you are to just focus on selfish desires, because your soul wants to drag you away from these differentiating desires and differentiating powers that are just focused on you as an individual. And if you follow your soul in union with soul, you slowly start to gain kind of an upside down pyramid of kind of oneness with all, whereas Satan's more like a pyramid upside down, but below the material realm and differentiating himself as a separate individual. But anyway, I hope that wasn't too much of a rant. But
no, I think that's pretty good. It's a good description.
It's like two upside down triangles, but there's a line in between that's material.
Yeah,
realm.
so that's weird because when you think you know, like I admit, sometimes I think that I understand something and then I realize that I'm completely ignorant with it.
And then those are the best times, because when we realize that we don't understand something, then we realize that there is room for improvement. And then recognizing that there's room for improvement allows us to evolve into that improvement. But the first step is always recognizing that there's something we don't know, and then working towards what we don't know. So, all right, do you want to wrap up with any questions or comments? Or
no, I think that this last probably session of this video is a good explanation.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, hey, thank you very much for watching, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot them down in the comment section below. If you have any personal questions, especially about my cum powder on my face, which is basically put at certain points that represent kind of the ideas that we're talking about, but also it's infused with spiritual energy, positive energy that I have chose to don. Now, if you want to subscribe to videos that you will not get on YouTube, feel free to hit up my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R, one word. I only require $1 a month to see all these videos that you will not see on YouTube. And if you want to give me more, that'd be great. But besides that, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button down there. And all of you, have a great day.